Welcome to this video on how to show dimensions when not within a sketch inside of Autodesk Fusion. I'm Ollie, I'm an Autodesk certified instructor, and today I'm going to be taking you through this tip to try and save you a bit of time and make sure that you can see your dimensional information when you need it. Now, in front of me I have a very basic table assembly, and I'm going to use this to show you how I can see dimensions inside of a sketch without needing to go into or edit that sketch. Now in my case here, sketch 1 of the table frame shows a side profile of my table, and inside of that is a lot of information about how that frame behaves, specifically the thickness of each piece of the frame. Now if I wanted to edit this, I would theoretically have to go into the sketch by editing it. I can then see the dimensions. I can update the dimension that I want to make it thicker. Now all these other dimensions are updating with it because they're all linked, and I would then finish the sketch and see those changes applied. Now that works, but what we'd really like is to be able to speed that process up. And what I can do is, instead of going in and editing the sketch, if you right click on a sketch in the browser, you will not only see the standard options for editing, but down below that you'll see some hide options that you may have not seen before. Specifically, there is an option for show dimension, and when you click on this, all of the sketch dimensions within that sketch will become visible, but I can go in and I can edit them as I would if I was inside of a sketch. So I could double click on this here and put it back to 30, and I could change that, and all of the changes would be updated automatically without even needing to enter the sketch. There are a few other options inside of here as well. I could show or hide projected geometries. Those are those purple lines that show up when you use the projection tools. I could also hide or show construction geometries, the dotted orange lines that you'll often see. Showing and hiding the full sketch, or just the profiles, those blue areas. Now the primary reason you're going to want to do this is time. Without having to go into each sketch every single time, you can quite quickly make changes and iterate on your design. It also allows you to see those changes that are being made a little bit more quickly and rattle through some different options. Now you still have to wait for Fusion to compute all of the changes that are being made by that sketch, but you don't have to go into the sketch, wait for it to load, and then finish the sketch and wait for it to come back. Now there are other ways that you could use this tool. For example, it doesn't have to be for a sketch that you're necessarily editing. One of the most powerful ways you can use this tool is with driven dimensions. What I could do is I could create a completely new sketch, let's say on the side of my table here, and I can then use the projection tools to map information about my overall file into this sketch. For example, I could create projected include and use the include 3D geometry, and that allows me to bring in sketch objects and project sketch objects anywhere in 3D space, not just on my 2D sketch. So I could project this back line here, this front line, and I could project the bottom here, let's say. Now I'm inside of here, I can create dimensions of those lines. So I could create a dimension that goes out backwards here. And what this is going to say is that this is a driven dimension. And for those who don't know what that means, it's essentially saying that that dimension is already specified by some other sketch or some other dimension elsewhere. So if this was to be an editable dimension, there would be two conflicting pieces of information. So instead, Fusion is telling us that this can exist and it can show us what that value is, but it won't drive the information about this. So I can create a driven dimension. It's driven by other sketch objects. You'll see that it's in brackets, and I can't double click or edit it because this is just showing information. Now I can add those dimensions for other parts in my design, another driven dimension there, another driven dimension here. And what I've now got is I've got a sketch with all of the overall dimensions of my table. Now if I finish that sketch, find the sketch in the browser, and then right click and show dimension, I now have a permanent inspection value for some of the key details that I need. And I can get on and I can keep editing my file in all the other ways. I could come back to here, for example, and I could edit this back to 50, and you'll see that our driven dimension will change because the height of the table has changed. So I can now go through, and often we may be using these inspection and these measure tools, but they're not permanent, they don't stick. But for some key pieces of information that you may want to just glance at occasionally, this can be a really powerful way of having that information to hand. Not only that, but when I save my file and I go through and I save this, those visibility changes will be stored. Exactly how the visibility of sketches or construction planes or components would also be stored when you save a file. Going through this process, there are still some pitfalls that you want to avoid, and there are some specific reasons that this might not show up for you when you right-click. First of all, the sketch has to be visible. The dimensions are still part of the sketch, so if my sketch visibility overall is turned off, the dimensions will also not appear, irrespective of how many times I press hide or show dimensions. So sometimes you might press show dimension and nothing will happen. You've got to make sure that that sketch is visible as well. You'll also notice that you can't do this from the main window. If I right click on my sketch here, those options don't appear. And that is because you are editing a specific sketch entity inside of that sketch. If you right click on an object, it's that object that you're getting the menu for. And this is also another really common reason that you may not see it appear. If I have a line, a sketch object selected in my main window, and then I go to right click on the sketch, you'll notice that my right click menu is different and it's not showing those show dimensions options. That's because when you have a sketch object selected, you're being given the menu relevant to that specific sketch object, not the sketch overall. So I can see here some information about editing. I can see the constraints that I could apply to this if I was inside the sketch. But you have to be not selecting any objects and then right click on the sketch for it to appear. Finally, if you're actually editing the sketch itself and you're already inside the sketch and then you right click, you'll notice that some of the options appear, like the hide and show profile, which by the way are also available in the sketch palette on the right hand side. But what you won't see is that main option to hide or show dimensions. You can see it in the sketch palette on the right and it will hide, but then when you finish the sketch, that has no bearing on that setting outside of the sketch. So this setting should be applied when not within a sketch so that you can apply that setting to the main solid tab in the design workspace. So hopefully that's a really useful tip that will allow you to see your dimensions outside of your sketch. It can really save you some time and it can allow you to iterate on your design very quickly. You can also set it up, as I've shown, to be able to see overall dimensions or key pieces of information that you want to be retained and shown throughout your designing process. If you've enjoyed this video, give us a like, add a comment down below of how you would use this, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.